Ethan's breath came in shallow gasps as he clung to Olivia's arm, stumbling through the mist-choked streets of Ravenshade. His mother's voice still echoed in his mind, the whisper of, "Welcome home," curling around his thoughts like a vice. The village felt more alive now, the shadows stretching unnaturally, the buildings leaning in as if listening. "Where are we going?" he rasped, barely keeping pace with Olivia's determined stride. "The church," she answered, her voice flat, unreadable. Ethan hesitated. The last time he had set foot in that place, it had nearly consumed him. But before he could protest, a guttural growl rumbled behind them. He turned just in time to see a figure emerge from the fog. It was his mother, or at least what was left of her. Her body jerked unnaturally, as if something inside was pulling her limbs like a puppet on frayed strings. Her head cocked at an impossible angle, the stitches across her lips splitting slightly as she released a rattling breath. And then she stepped forward. Ethan's legs refused to move. "Ethan?" Olivia's grip tightened around his wrist. "Run!" The world tilted as she yanked him into motion. The church bell tolled in the distance, though he could have sworn there was no one left to ring it. Each chime reverberated through his bones, making his vision swim. The closer they got, the louder it became, until the noise was a physical weight pressing down on him. The church doors loomed ahead, gaping open like the maw of some great beast. Olivia pulled him inside, slamming the heavy doors shut behind them, just as a piercing wail split the night. Ethan staggered forward, trying to catch his breath. The interior of the church was worse than he remembered. Candles flickered in iron sconces, casting shadows that twisted and danced on the walls. The pews were filled, not with people, but with figures shrouded in darkness, their faces turned toward the altar. And at the altar stood the priest, or something that had once been the priest. His robe clung to his gaunt frame, the fabric eaten away in places as if rotting from within. His skin was paper-thin, stretched too tightly over his skull, and his eyes, if they could still be called that, were empty voids, dark pits that seemed to swallow the candlelight. "Ethan?" His voice was a rasping whisper, yet it filled every inch of the space. "You have returned." Ethan swallowed hard, glancing at Olivia. Her face was pale, her expression unreadable. "Why did you bring me here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because," the priest said, taking a slow step forward, "it is time for you to remember." The candles flickered violently. The figures in the pews began to stir, shifting in their seats. Ethan's pulse thundered. "Remember what?" A cold smile stretched across the priest's face. "The truth." The air thickened, pressing down on him like unseen hands. His vision blurred, and suddenly the church around him was gone. He was no longer standing. He was falling, plunging through darkness, through time. Voices whispered around him, calling his name in tones both loving and filled with sorrow. And then, the memories came. Flashes of childhood running through the village streets, laughing, his mother's warm embrace, his father's strong voice, the scent of rain-soaked earth. Then the fire, screams, shadows twisting in the flames, hands grabbing at him, pulling him away. A woman's voice, his mother's, sobbing, a promise. The memory sharpened. He was standing at the edge of the forest, hand in hand with Olivia, staring back at the burning village. "You have to forget," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You have to go. If you stay, it will take you too." "What will?" his younger self asked, voice shaking. Olivia glanced back at the fire, her expression filled with terror. The village. Then darkness, a void swallowing the memory whole. Ethan gasped as he was yanked back to the present, collapsing onto the cold stone floor of the church. His head throbbed, his body trembling. The priest stood over him, watching. "You were never meant to leave," he said softly, "and now that you remember, you must make a choice." The figures in the pews slowly turned toward him, their hollow eyes glinting in the candlelight. Stay or become one of them. The doors behind him rattled violently as something pounded against them from the outside. His mother. The priest extended a skeletal hand. "Welcome home, Ethan."